Welcome to the Obesity Medicine Podcast with your host, Dr. Rentea, board certified in internal medicine and obesity medicine. Here, we talk about a path to metabolic health, and we have real conversations about chronic weight management and living a full life. Just a reminder, I am a physician, but I'm not your physician. So everything that's on this podcast is for informational purposes, but please go talk to your doctor about what's right for you. There is no medical advice being given on this podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Everybody, I'm really excited. Today we have an amazing therapist, Dr. Oh my God, Doctor. You're a doctor now.
Oh, I got promoted.
We have an amazing therapist, Amie Adams. And I want to just, before I even have her introduce herself, I want to just tell you a few things. So Amie has been in my life for a very long time, and she actually comes into my programs and leads sessions that I think are really pivotal within the 30/30 program, where I don't think that everything is just a metabolic thing or an accountability thing. I think that there are other issues that we face. I'm getting chills as I say this, where, for example, in the last round, one of the things that Amie went over was body image. And there are all these different topics that she covers. And I think that this work is really important. So in addition to Amie being an amazing person, having gone through her own journey, today I'm really bringing Amie on to talk about how you can start this health journey, even if life looks hard. And I'm going to let her kind of share what it looked like years ago and what she went through. And I want everybody to listen today with the lens of, if you're going through a hard time, which most of us are majority of the time, particularly when we're recording this podcast, I find that there's just a lot politically happening, a lot that people are navigating, and it's really hard to still do your health as well when sometimes it feels like there are just other larger things at stake. And so, Amie, I just wanted to kind of give background of kind of how important you are in my world, because I really want people to know that. And can you start out with just introducing yourself and just a little bit, just let people know a little bit about you?
Sure. First of all, I'm so excited to be here. And I can tell you all that I have been a therapist for over 25 years. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, not a doctor, although if you gave me a chance to go back and get my PhD and financed it, I would probably do that today. So that's my background, and worked a lot in community mental health, working with a lot of underserved populations and people who really need care, and fighting stigma of mental health has been a huge piece of my work as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's lots of years of experience of you having spoken to people and working through things, I can imagine, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I've really had the privilege to come alongside a lot of people and a lot of staff who are working in the field. And I respect so much. They have such a hard job. And I don't think we always think about all the vicarious trauma that happens through helping others, whether
Yeah.
formally or informally.
Yeah, completely. So one thing I'm wondering is if you'd be open to sharing today, if we can talk about when you were caretaking for your mother, how I know you had really spoken about how exhausted you were during that period, but this was also when you started to take some small steps toward a different health path. And how did you mentally give yourself permission to even get started? What did it look like? I think people are really going to get a lot if they could hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first off, I would say that my health journey has been, and my struggles with weight have been lifelong. So, you name it, I've tried it. I would have little successes. I could lose maybe 25 pounds. And then the key for me is when it started to not work or the scale wasn't moving, I would quit. It's a very strong perfectionist tendency.
Yeah.
So, in terms of giving myself permission, honestly, there was a whole piece of this for me where I think I just had to be desperate to do something different.
Mhm.
I don't know that it was a conscious giving myself permission, but my caregiving journey with my mom, I had moved her in. She had vascular dementia. So I moved her in with me in August of 2021, which I was not planning to do before COVID happened, but realizing how that would look with COVID on the horizon if she were in a facility, that's kind of what led to that, and lots of prayer. But I was so exhausted from taking care of her and then working full time, because I worked full time as an executive the entire time I had her, that I had to just be like, okay, this is too painful for me to continue the same way. Like they say a lot of times, in order to make a change, it has to be more painful to stay the same than it is to change. And I really think that's where I was at. And so I think desperation was my biggest thing. And then just reality is I didn't have a lot of time or energy to put into a big perfectionistic health journey.
That's really well said, that despite it being hard, it was harder to stay how you were compared to
Yeah.
take the actions 100%.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes people call that hitting rock bottom. I think that's a bad analogy because I think that it somehow implies that everything has fallen apart. I find often we are in the midst of a really busy life and all these things going on. Actually, to the outside, it looks like it's okay because people were probably thinking, oh, wow, she's working full time. She's taking care of her mom. She's a great daughter, thinking all these amazing things. And when we're struggling, often other people don't know. What do you think were some of the smallest things that you were able to start with given all of that?
Yeah, I think some of the smallest things really were, it really started before action for me. So it was trying to find people who inspired me on the journey. I started watching other people's journeys. I think early on, even before TikTok, I was in some kind of a group for people on Facebook that needed to lose over 100 pounds because I felt like there were some differences in the journey and I needed to
Oh,
have
totally.
encouragement for long-term
Totally.
changes. So that was one of the first things I did. And then once I became more aware of TikTok and people's journeys, I actually joined during the pandemic just for funny cat videos, something funny. I needed some lightness somewhere. That's really the very, very first things that I did was to start exposing myself to more things. I get inspired through the
Yeah.
idealism of everything, and that goes with the perfectionism too. But I had to start shifting my mindset and taking in more positive content to believe it was possible.
I actually love that you bring this up because I think a lot of people think, well, okay, I got to get out a planner and where's the water and where's the protein? They're like trying to action their way into things and they have no idea what's possible or what they're actually wanting. And I know when people are listening, they're thinking, no, well, I want to lose weight and that's it. It's like, no, you want to feel better. You want to be able to walk around. You want to be able to do things. It's not actually that the scale goes down. It's when that happens, likely you're able to do these other things. And I think that
Yes.
you probably were able to see some of that open up. And I was actually the same as you back in the day. I spent 3 months just thinking about, well, why am I doing these things? And really, I guess being in the pre-contemplative state a lot longer than just like hopping into action because it had never worked when I tried a calorie reduction plan or whatever it was. So
Yep.
I love that as a step that you found community. And I'm guessing also that they were places that didn't trigger you, where it wasn't like, ooh, I can't eat in that way, or I'm never going to look that way. You found a community where they were going potentially through similar struggles. So I think that's important for people to hear as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I had a good group of friends and people I can talk to, but this was different. This was me seeking out people who inspired me, who'd been on similar types of journeys. And honestly, there was plenty of that stuff. If you look on social, there's always stuff that will trigger whoever you are, whatever your issue is,
So
right?
true.
I just scrolled past it. I didn't focus on those things because who needs more of that in your life when you're already stressed out?
So true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's so good. So I'm wondering for people who are they're caregiving or maybe working demanding jobs or just overwhelmed with life, right? What mindset shifts do you think are most important when trying to prioritize health without adding more stress or guilt?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's just a couple of things that happened. So for me, as I started learning more about metabolic health, the very first thing was I realized that it wasn't all my fault,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I've actually never been someone who had asked my doctor for help, who had been willing to consider medication because I just poured all the responsibility and blame on myself. I can do it. I don't need to do this. I don't need to consider meds. I don't want to consider surgery because I can make these changes. Duh, what's wrong with me? I could have written you a book. I knew all
I
the things.
know.
So I think it's just realizing that there are many, many things that contribute to where you're at now and not blaming yourself is
Mm.
the first thing that can even just give you energy to take any steps at all. And then the second thing I would say is find something small that feels almost even insignificant, but it's not super overwhelming and just start there. And that looks different for everybody. For me, it was drinking water. And I was doing that as I was learning about the GLP-1s, and I ended up starting on Manjaro. That's a whole story. I've had to fight to get that. But the water was the very first thing. And I found an app called Hydrate that was really kind of fun. And they have water bottles that would light up that would remind you to drink and this is not a commercial for them. I'm not sponsored by them, but little
I'm
sayings that would
running to
send
go look it
you.
up. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
literally writing this down.
And you can compete with your friends on it if you want to. And I needed something different at that point. And I'm a little bit of a tech nerd, so that fit for me.
I love that. So find the smallest thing that's not overwhelming and start there. I think that's beautiful. I like apps like this. A lot of the ones that people tell me about, there's like a water llama one where the llama gets colored in during the day.
I
So
like that
there's
one too.
yes, there's like so many different versions to doing these things that really help ourselves, but making it small enough. I find that people, what they think is small is still an exponentially huge task. They're like, I'm going to track all my food. I'm like, okay, friend, like take a beat. Can we track breakfast? Can we
Yep.
look at protein count with breakfast? Maybe not even all of breakfast. I think what's interesting is if we're not able to achieve those things, to keep bringing back the goal. And we might think it's so small, but I like how you were like, water. Okay, so
Yep.
love that. So what happens? Did you ever notice that was there a role for boundaries or asking for help in your ability to really stay focused on your health? Or how would you advise someone who feels like, there's quote unquote no time or quote unquote no support, because people's lives look different, who they have in their friendship circle or plus or minus access to a physician, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting. I think a lot of people who are overachievers have very demanding jobs or are caregivers. There's sometimes an overlap between that. There's all the pressure to do it yourself, right? I'm always helping someone else, and it's more comfortable, frankly. So, asking for help is the reality. There's no getting around it. It's uncomfortable. So, when I started learning about the Mounjaro, I thought, well, I need to ask my primary care if she would help me with this. And I was very fortunate that I had a primary care. And I'm going to give a little caregiving tip to those out there. Is not This is a bonus. So I knew all the things that can happen with caregiving just professionally. And one of them is that your own health often declines. And so one of my strategies that I employed was I actually ended up making my mom's primary care physician my primary care physician because I knew I was going to be in there with her. And I was very fortunate to find amazing, supportive primary care physician, a nurse practitioner who was just listened to me and understood the big picture because of the caregiving. And I was so scared, even knowing that, even having that support and knowing I'd probably get a good response from her. I remember just how scared I was going into that appointment to ask for help and say, hey, I can't do this on my own. I need more help. And then she turned out to be freaking amazing and fought for me to get approved and all that. But I
Yeah.
think it's identifying where there's any potential of help. And so I think about this now and like so many of the places where it would have been feasible that I could have gotten discouraged and pushed off track. But I
Yeah.
got a good response from her. And if I wouldn't have, I was in this warrior mindset, honestly, with the insurance and everything at that point, because I was just so fed up with the systems that exist that I was going to fight whoever it was. And so if she would have said no, I would have had to backtrack and find some other resources just to keep fighting. Because the one thing I would say to people is you're worth it. You are worth the figuring it out and the fighting.
So good. Oh, yes, you're worth it. And I think people are so exhausted from having to fight all day long for things that then it's like, oh, one more thing. But yes, you're worth it. And I wrote this down. You said there's no getting around it that you're going to have to ask for help. Yes. I'm sorry. Everyone wants to try to find some easy ways to get the meds or do other things. It's really not about that. It's that you really need someone to be following you. Like you were talking about the relationship where probably she was calling out some things where you were in there with your mother. She probably just turned to you and said, and how are you doing? There's just that moment, right? So I love that you bring this up. When I think about on my journey as well, how many people I'm asking for help and how many areas I'm getting help, it makes me think, wow, like I'm asking my husband, hey, can you get our kid up and get him to the bus stop so that I have time for a walk? I would not be able to do a morning walk with a full work day, with getting kid out after hours, all those kind of things. It physically would not fit in, right? And it's like asking for that, seeing if we need meal deliveries, getting the doctor on board, getting other coaching help, the exercise help. It's like an army essentially that's supporting me, right? And then we
Yep.
sit there and we wonder why some people are able to keep going versus others. And it's like, because we've kept building the team. And I know that everyone doesn't have access to all that. But what you're talking about is just like starting to ask people, starting to get at that. So I'm wondering from that perspective, I love how you said how you knew this intellectually, like from helping other people, but then experiencing it was a whole nother thing. Do you think that with being a therapist, have there ever been any surprises or any other ahas as you've gone along the journey, either like personally or professionally, that you didn't grasp until going through it? Because I know that's one kind of like how hard the caregiver role. And I will say, as I was a primary care doctor before going into more weight management, and The biggest challenge would be when a loved one would get dementia, the caretaker support role. In fact, I always found that the caretaker needed more help, and often they were both under my care. They often needed more help. They were breaking down behind the scenes because they loved so much who they were taking care of. And it is just so many levels. So any other things that have shocked you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, wow, where to start with that? That's such a great question. I think a couple of things come to mind. One, I don't think I really understood. I knew the thing about health. I knew the statistics that caregivers often struggle with serious health issues, that there's consequences for caregiving, that just there's only so much we all have to give, right? There are limits. And so I knew that going in, but I think what really surprised me was the isolation
Yeah.
involved. I am extremely extroverted and have gone into this with a great circle of friends and people I can call at any day and time. And I just had no energy to even, like, I would forget to return text messages. And that wasn't normal per se for me. And I was usually pretty active socially. But the isolation of that was really, really surprising and was super draining for me. That just, it came to the end of the day. And even if I'd had a friend who's like, let's go out and let's catch up, I would have wanted to emotionally, but I don't know that I could have. So that was really shocking to me to get into the reality of it versus knowing intellectually.
If that was a need of yours and it wasn't being met, is that something that you just had to accept because of how exhausted you were? Or do you think it's something that, like with time, were you seeking out ways to still get that?
Like the extroverted part of me, I still had to continue seeking it out. It just was much less regular.
Yeah.
And I think, in fairness, my friends, it was hard for them to know what to do to support me. Right. And so the littlest thing, like someone reaching out and texting, and just checking in was a big thing, right? How are you? And being prepared to listen. There would be lots of things that they couldn't do anything about, but I was also fortunate that I had those friends. So when you don't return the text message, I didn't have friends on the other end who were interpreting that as, well, she's too busy and she doesn't want to connect with me. They would reach out again. It wasn't like, I'm not going to reach out until she responds. So I think the persistence there was really helpful. And then, of course, eventually I was going to do that because I knew I needed that support and I needed to still have a bigger perspective in life. And practically going out was a lot harder because I was working full time. And for the first year and a half that I had mom at home or a little bit under, I wasn't able to find any caregiving in the evenings, which is really what I needed because the agencies couldn't find people that wanted to work a few hours in the evening,
I
which was
know.
shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's like when you need the help. And that's probably why you had to dig so deep because it's like, even if you were open to the help and you did ask for the help, it didn't exist. Right. And we need to
Yeah.
validate that too, because it's not always
Yeah.
like, well, just Matea says, just ask. It's like, oftentimes it's, oh, I'm calling
Yeah.
out. Nothing's at the other side. Right. Like,
Yeah.
the need, but
Seriously.
yeah.
I mean, I was helping my mom. My mom was on Medicaid. I was helping get her paperwork all in order because that had all lapsed. And I will say the other thing that just is encouraging. So if you're out there helping, or if you're a friend of someone who's walking through a hard time, that kind words really matter. So I got to a point, I'm usually pretty composed. And like I said, I've worked as an executive and I've been through lots of hard situations. But there was a moment where I remember talking to one of the home care agencies and I was just flabbergasted that you can't find, I wanted like 4 nights a week, 3 or 4 hours a night just for someone to come help my mom get
Yeah.
settled. So maybe I could go out with a friend or do something for myself. And it wasn't available. And I was in tears with this person on the phone. And okay, that doesn't happen for me a lot, but I was just at a breaking point and I was like desperate. Now, she was very, very kind, and that was good for me. It didn't solve the immediate need, but I just had to keep going back and asking. So for that night, I just had to, rate in like, the systems are crazy and I can't believe this is not available. Because if I weren't there, my mom would have had to go into care, organized care being paid for by the state a lot sooner. So yeah, I think the kind words were also really important. And that it's okay to get to that breaking point of being in tears. I was more shocked by it, I think, than anything else.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. So you've brought up here actually several things because I was thinking we all know people in our lives that are going through hard things, whether it be a divorce, caretaking, overwhelm with young kids, everyone's going through something, a job change, right? And I was thinking, okay, how can we support them? And you brought up one thing of just checking in, just how are you doing, even if the person doesn't answer. And then maybe when we talk to them, that sometimes are encouraging nice words, that could maybe mean more than we realize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So along those lines, if someone's listening, they're going through a hard season, whether it's caretaking, grief, burnout, there's so many different versions of this, right? And they want to start caring for their health, but they feel stuck, right? What do you think is maybe one piece of advice you'd give them to start today?
I think as I look back, I mentioned the perfectionism. I always wanted to write this really comprehensive plan and color code things and have an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, all the things, right? And that's just not ever how it's ever going to look. I mean, maybe there are some people out there who can do that. That is definitely not the place I was in. So I would say do it messy. Do it messy. Do it when you're exhausted. And again, that goes back to finding the little thing that you can do while you're exhausted. I'll give you an example. So, when you think about the typical response to weight issues, eat less, move more. Eat less, move more. Okay. Yes, obviously, I'm not a dumb person. I know that exists, right? And I work in the healthcare industry, but it was supremely unhelpful, right? So I had to start small. I had to start fighting. The water was the first thing. And then once I got on the Mount Jaro after that fight was successful and I got the prior auth after being denied like 4 different times, and I have a lot of comorbidities, it was ridiculous. So even then, all I knew was okay, I need to somehow be eating protein. I got to figure that out and then do the water. The exercise for me did not come in until much later in the picture because honestly, it was just too much. I couldn't really even walk around the block when I first moved into this place where I live now. So I had to do it messy and small, and it wasn't going to look pretty and perfect and linear in terms of the progress.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring this up because people, I think going along with this, do it messy. People want the perfect time to present itself when there's not a lot going on, and like you said, they can prep all the amazing things and have it all planned, or that all the meals are going to come in prepared from some service, and that's just never the answer. You get sick of things, your taste buds change, you suddenly food spoils. I mean, we could go on and just realizing like, let me just do anything today, anything to move the needle. So I really like that. Do it messy because I think that can give us all permission, no matter where we're at, to just take a step. Do you think that there's any other things that you would have wanted to hear when you were going through this, kind of in that getting started phase, that would be inspirational?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just to be compassionate to yourself. That's a really hard thing to do. And sometimes we get into the self blame. And I know for me, this came out a lot with the scale, right? So the scale and I have had a very rocky relationship. And like I said before, my other attempts to address the weight, as soon as the scale wasn't moving, I would be like, oh, I screwed up. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. It wasn't perfect. So I would give up at
Yeah.
that point. And I think for me, it was realizing that the scale may not be moving, but that can't be the be all end all. Like my worth doesn't come from that. And all you can do each day is do your best. So even if I'm focusing on protein and water and I didn't do well on that day, just saying, okay, tomorrow's a new day or the next minute is a new day, right? And just having a lot of grace because even early on, as I look back at some journals that I didn't journal a lot because I didn't have a lot of time, but I had a point when even I was about a month in and I was really working through that scale thing. And I was like, I'm discouraged. I'm never going to get there because I was looking at the big picture of how far I had to go. I mean, to be honest, if you go by BMI, I had over 200 pounds to lose when I started this journey. And that was very overwhelming to me. If I thought about that, I was like, I am never going to get there. So I had to look at the small things or I would have quit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's the next couple of pounds, or honestly, I eventually and mostly move away from the scale. I'm like, okay, did I do the things that I know I need to do to take care of myself? And it became this whole other journey that was way broader than the food and nutrition and moving. It was sleeping, it was drinking enough water, it was trying to manage my stress. And I'm still imperfect at all those things, and you can still make progress being imperfect.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? It's like the gap and the gain thinking. And I'm just going to refresh people if they're listening and they haven't listened to me at nauseum talk about this. But it's sort of this when we're looking at, oh my gosh, this whole thing that I can't achieve, that's really the gap, right? It's idealized whenever we reach it, it's too far away. We get depressed, we get down, versus looking at the gain. And I always think that's funny when we're talking about it with weight loss, right? It's actually the loss that is
Yes.
the gain. But the gain is like, look how far I've come. I'm even willing to do this. I've asked for help. I'm trying to get water. I'm even willing to journal on this a month in. All of that, like it's literally we're in the exact same spot, but the perspective shift is so much. And then one, we're willing to keep going, and the other one, we just want to sit down and give up. Like, right? It's like
Yeah.
the toddler that just sits down. It's like, I'm done. I'm not walking anymore. You have to pick me up, but there's no one to pick us up when we're older. So,
Yes, exactly. That would be nice if someone was there to just pick us up and make it all go away and make it perfect.
exactly. So hopefully people that are listening, if you're in a hard spot, you kind of hear, just taking any opportunity to do it messy, to find the smallest step that it is going to be hard. You are going to have times of crying, that all of that, and yet you can keep going. You can do this. I really just wanted to give that moment because I know a lot of people are in scenarios that maybe there's actually not even an end sight in mind, right? Like a lot of people, they'll have maybe a child with a disability and they know I've got to make this work for life, right? And so that too actually have been some of the most powerful clients that I've worked with where we need to figure out answers for a burden that I don't want to call it a burden. That's the wrong word. For a challenge that we're really going to need to figure out for life. So it's just this that we can figure this stuff out, even if it's small moments that we create during the week that you didn't think were possible. So, Amie, I have loved talking to you. Can you tell? I know you always talk about with your business, real coaching for real people. Can you tell us a little bit about what is your business name? How can people reach out to you? Social? Just tell us a few different ways, and then what you really help people with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really help people with just having someone on your side who's walked through it, who is walking through it, right? I'm not done. This is not a before and after, and you're talking to the after Amie, but someone who can really help you problem solve, navigate, be that person on your side to help you figure out your goals. And honestly, to probably even break those goals down smaller to figure out what your success is, because there's not a formula. I can't say, hey, here's what I did, and this is now a formula that I'm going to talk to everyone about that
Yeah.
works for everyone else too. It's helping you figure out in your life situation what's realistic and what helps for you. So the name of my business is called Grace Glen Wellness. And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok and my website as well. So
I love it. And we're going to make sure to link everything. You brought up something with, yes, how you brought up how it's not like, well, this worked for me. So now I'm going to tell you the exact same thing to do. I can't remember what it was, but there was something earlier today that reminded me of that. And I guess I'm always shocked when I work with patients. Every single person reaches success differently. It just shocks me. It's like, it's not just like, and everybody is this one med. It's like everyone figures out their own way to do things and how powerful it would be if someone's listening, if you're on this journey, you're actually struggling with caretaking to get help from Amie, because I'll tell my own version of this is having a son that just was challenging in the beginning for me. And I got coaching this one time. And what the coach said, now people listening, this might not sound super powerful, but basically, so I was always thinking to myself, well, it's going to get better when, like when he's this age, when da, da, da. But the coach basically said to me, what if it never changes, And it was this moment where I was like, here's what it did. It made me realize I have to plan for now. I can't wait for a time to change or be disappointed if it looks different. And it instantly gave me relief. I changed my mind. I started thinking about everything differently. It's craziness how working with someone can ask you a question that does not sound profound. Like those of you listening, you don't think when you hear this, you're like, what, Matea? She just said nothing changes. But if you work with the right person, it can bring you like leaps and bounds ahead, and nothing in your life changed necessarily for you to completely think differently and to be able to achieve new things. So thank you for coming on. I hope that everybody is able to find you, and the people that are lucky enough to work with you, just you're absolutely in amazing hands because Amie is just super incredible. Thank you so much, Amie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being part of my journey. Your podcast was one of the early ones that I listened
Oh, I
to that
love it.
left me inspired. So I'm having my fangirl moment, but thank you. And do reach out. I really do love encouraging and helping people. So I look forward to meeting more people to help.
Amazing. Thank you.
That marks the end of today's episode. But if you're newer to the podcast, I want to tell you about something that we have, and it's a free podcast roadmap. So this is perfect for any of you that are listening where you want to be directed to very specific episodes. So let's say that you are just starting out and you want to know, what should I do right when I start on the medications? Or you're experiencing certain side effects on the GLP-1s, or you want to know what to do if you're in a plateau, or if emotional eating is taking over, or if hunger levels are high. So we have many different categories of episodes that we've talked about, because there's a lot at this point. So if you want to be able to navigate that very easily, we have it broken down by category, and also the episodes that are there, and we hyperlink to everything. So you can just click on it and find the episode, easy peasy. If you want that, you can go to renteaclinic.com/podcast roadmap. We'll have it linked right here underneath the show notes where you're listening. And you can go ahead and get that free resource so that it makes it easy for you to navigate, because I know that it's really hard when someone has an established podcast. I am such a podcast fiend, listening to podcasts all day long. And when I find one that I love, but there's a lot that are out there, I am so lost. So I hope that you enjoy this free podcast roadmap. Again, the link to get to that is going to be renteaclinic.com/podcast roadmap. I hope this is helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.